people, our system scientists, will understand this really well. Other folks, even our general explanation of this might take some time to absorb, but more people are going to understand this in an intimate way immediately because they're living through this right now. We talk about concepts such as, I mentioned nonlinear growth, like things are, well, in this case, things are decaying at a faster rate than people's, the linear systems thinking in our mind is prepared for. We talk about contagion. In this case, we're talking about the spread of ideas and behaviors. We're talking about tipping points where, one day the system is in this state and the next day it's completely changed. In the world of entrepreneurship, that might be a major exit, right? Where there could be a period of nothing, feels like nothing's happening for 5, 10, 20 years, but then something really big happens and then the community's in a different state. So these kind of concepts, as we explain them and wrap them around this notion of startup communities and entrepreneurial ecosystems, hopefully will land with people who are unfamiliar with them in a more tangible way.
Gotcha. I always want to bring these things home to Portland. You talked a little bit about what Rick's doing with Pi. Also, shout out for those looking for a great accelerator to be part of. Pi's got their applications open right now, and I'm sure we can throw those in the chat for those of us around the world that might be interested at this point in time. But what are some things, as you've traveled around and talked to different locales and looked at different ecosystems, what are some of the 2 or 3 things that you always say are the things that need to be worked on that aren't given much attention, and what can we be doing? Where should we be asking questions, and what are the things we should be paying attention to that maybe we're not?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of things. I would say, look, for me, it goes back to, some of the motivation behind this book was that a lot of this has just been made to be overly complicated, right? Focusing on how do we drive this, how do we drive performance in an entrepreneurial ecosystem? And at the end of the day, what it's really about is helping entrepreneurs succeed. People are looking for these big outcomes. I know everyone wants that, but there are so many factors that are occurring simultaneously that we're really not in control of that, right? And so for me, it's about, are people willing to find ways, big and small, to help entrepreneurs succeed, right? And for me, that unit of transaction is one-to-one meetings, building trust. Stephen, we talked about trust previously in Brad's first book, Startup Communities. He talks about networks over hierarchies. Here we expand that to networks of trust. So are people willing to sit down with founders and help them, as I said, in ways big and small? Are they willing to open up their networks to them, connect them to people? I think Rick Tarosi has a great framework for this, collecting and connecting dots. He's meeting with as many people as possible, trying to help them. Oftentimes he can't help them in that moment, but then that spark occurs later on and he makes that connection. Those kinds of things. I guess actually, secondly, just to stay on Rick, and I don't want to puff up your ego too much here, Rick, but I actually think people like Rick are the key to healthy startup communities. And in fact, going back to my point about things getting overly complicated, I would like to see, I've worked a lot in the realm of public policy, and governments are asking, well, what can we do? And my answer would say, find the Rick Tarosis of the world and support whatever they're doing, because he or she will know. I can use an example from in London. In my opinion, London is a very collaborative ecosystem. It's obviously a very large one, very well capitalized. In a minute. Okay. But things are happening, right? Like all of the foundation that's been laid the last, 10, 20, 30 years is really starting to take. And that's when, I was working with one of the government bodies that's in charge of the digital economy initiatives there. And I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Station F. It's in Paris. It's the largest startup campus in the world, apparently, with various programming mixed in. And so again, I feel like London, I consider it to be one of the top performing ecosystems in the world. And here we have this government saying, well, we need a station F, we need a big real estate play. And I'm thinking, look around you, this is London. Real estate is not the issue. And so to kind of end this on a framework for thinking about this, in the book, we talk about the 7 capitals. So people are constantly complaining about capital. And what they mean is financial capital. And oftentimes in entrepreneurship, they mean venture capital or angel investment capital. A report that I did a couple of years ago with an academic named Richard Florida, we looked at, the 300 most active entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world in terms of venture capital activity. And I think Portland was in, the top 30 or 40 worldwide. So it might at times feel like Portland is undercapitalized, but comparatively to the rest of the world, it's not. But our framework is sort of getting people to push beyond just thinking about financial capital. We talk about intellectual capital. So that's, IP, ideas, technologies, human capital, skills, knowledge. We talk about physical capital, which is infrastructure, quality of place. And we really stress, network capital and cultural capital. So I guess kind of, which, network capital you can think of as, we're describing networks of trust. So to use maybe a ridiculous example, if you dumped, $1 billion of venture capital into to the Australian outback, is that going to produce high growth startups? No, because it's missing so many of these other factors. And so I guess that's what I would challenge people to think about is, what can we, instead of always asking for some external solution, if only we had more VCs here or whatever, to think about, are we getting the most out of what we currently have in place by helping each other, by not always trying to optimize our little part. So whether our company, our incubator, our accelerator, but thinking about how this is all coming together. And as I said, a number of times, just looking for ways, big and small, to help entrepreneurs, whether that's through mentorship or connecting them to people in your network, look to do those things.
Awesome. In your book, you talk about something called the measurement gap, I believe it is.
Measurement trap.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah. So, I come from this background of economics and data where we think, generally regression analyses can explain the world. And there's always been this residual, in the studies I've done, looking at what factors are correlated with entrepreneurial outputs, whether you're looking at high growth firms, venture-backed exits, and so on. And, the fit of those models, the data doesn't really explain the outcomes very well. There's this large residual. What is that? We don't really know. It's very hard to measure the things that matter most. And so one of the things that we've observed is that, especially as we get new actors, a larger quantity of new actors involved in the ecosystem. So I keep picking on some of these larger institutional actors, but their funding sources, they need to justify their participation through hard metrics, which is understandable. But oftentimes they're the wrong metrics. The things that are really the most valuable, things like relationships, connectivity, the cultural factors that we talked about, those you can't just go and download a data set on the internet, like a Crunchbase data set, or PitchBook or whatever Census Bureau data on startup activity. You can't just go and download that somewhere, and it makes the job really difficult. So what ends up happening is strategies get optimized around those metrics rather than the metrics, so the metrics, the flawed metrics drive the strategy rather than doing what's right. And that's not to criticize the research world. There's an army of very smart people who have been working on this for a long time, but I just think it underlines the inherent difficulty in measuring performance in entrepreneurial ecosystems.
Awesome. I think, you talked a lot about those 4 things: physical, mental, economic, and racial. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up in the moment that we find ourselves in, particularly here in the United States, around George Floyd, I see some folks in the startup ecosystem looking to transact their way out of things, or to have the best of intentions. But I oftentimes think they're not using the word trust. They're not talking about relationships and understanding the interconnectedness of things. Can you speak to a little bit of what you're seeing and what maybe doesn't work definitively, and maybe what might work, and where folks can kind of focus?
Well, the good news is that it feels like there's momentum right now. Certainly feels like there's more momentum behind this issue than at any time in my life that I recall. I'm just going to steal a phrase from a friend of mine, well, also a friend of Brad's. Her name is Monisha Merchant. She is originally from Colorado, and she worked on Senator Michael Bennett's staff. And I guess it was back whenever SOPA PIPA was that like 2012 or 2011? Senator Bennett said, look, we need to know about this internet stuff. Can you go figure out what the deal is with this internet stuff and these startups? And so that was Monisha's job, was to just figure it out, and she drove around the state and was like a pillar in the startup community over time. And she does this very, the simple thing she said to me once, which is just, engage and listen, right? Don't try to be the solution. Look to empower folks who are already in a position, who have been living this work for a long period of time. I think, but again, it feels like there's momentum. So that's the good thing, as you mentioned, Stephen, that maybe right now people are, grasping for quick fixes when really this is the long-term game. But that would be my,
Right.
My advice, and it's been my strategy, is to keep my mouth shut, to listen, to engage with folks, to learn and empower those individuals in ways that I'm capable of doing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'm going to we got some questions piling up here in the queue. Thank you, Mr. Trozy, who apparently does everything according to Ian, but he also is the steward of our questions here in the queue. So I'm going to go to one of those. Your advice for coping with the ecosystem bullies, braggarts who feel entitled to run things.
Oof. Ignore them. Build a critical mass around them. Don't engage with them. Don't give them oxygen.
Perfect. Works for me. I'm a little petty though, so that's hard for me to do at times. But
maybe that's naive. Maybe I would like to hear what the person, or if people have comments about that situation where they've dealt with that, productively.
I think part of me, especially when there's bullies and braggarts, I believe in being focused on solutions, but I think oftentimes folks go to do victory laps around things, but that if there's a critique or accountability, they oftentimes want that privately. And it's like, well, I didn't make it public. You made it public. And so for me to respond to you publicly shouldn't be seen as, cancel culture or calling you out even, just holding you accountable to the things that you said, and maybe also just providing another perspective on the things that you're working on. Next question. So Senate Republicans just this afternoon released their draft of the next COVID relief for new and small businesses. What, if anything, could federal policymakers be doing now to promote startup communities across the country?
Well, a lot. I mean, the first thing I would say is to push funding and decision-making authority out to the states and localities as much as possible. I guess states is a little bit easier. I'll talk about a live piece of legislation on the floor. So I'll actually use this opportunity to make a call out to an organization that I'm a part of called the Center for American Entrepreneurship, which exists to essentially help Congress make better laws to help entrepreneurs. And a bill on the floor right now is called the New Business Preservation Act, which, going against what I was just saying about venture capital is not always the answer, but it's a $2 billion bill designed to push money to the states to capitalized states that then decide to get that into the right fund managers in those regions. So I'd like to see, more efforts like that. As I mentioned before, recognizing that there's more than one type of capital, big human capital piece of legislation that has just been stalled for almost a decade has been startup an entrepreneur's visa, which I would like to see happen. The Startup Act, which was introduced in 2011 or 12, has been stalled because of that. Feels like that's kind of dead on arrival, but that's something I'd like to see. And then finally, just to kind of to push them to think more broadly about this bigger message I have, which is I wrote a blog post on this, which was inspired by Joe, who's here today. This notion of platforms versus pipes. Know that you're creating a platform. You don't have to actually deliver the solution. Thinking about investing in people and networks over just real estate, which has been kind of the modus operandi of economic development.
This is where you give your pitch on the program we should not name about getting tax credits in cities across the country.
Oh, yeah.
That's
for next week.
Yeah. Next question. In the PDX startup community, has anything surprised you, good or bad, as it relates to the reaction to COVID and Black Lives Matter? What strengths has this community shown?
Hard for me to answer that because I'm not a member of the community. But what I will say is that I have a number of folks in the Portland startup community who I follow on social media channels, primarily Twitter, and I've seen them be some of the most active voices. Obviously, I don't have to remind you of the situation that's unfolding at your doorstep right now, and I can't imagine what it's like to feel that pressure, which I'm sure your community is feeling. So yeah, that's my take as an observer on social media.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that hits really, really close to home in proximity wise. Our sponsor, Nat, he had one of his family members get injured in one of the protests. And so that's a very real thing that's happening right now, but it's also emblematic of how important it is for folks to be out there talking about change that we all want to see. Mm-hmm. Next question. What are some actionable steps we can take in our communities to elevate the conversation around entrepreneurship? What resources are available to facilitate this? It's a little similar to one of the other ones, but I'm always down to hear more about this from your perspective, especially.
Well, of course, the most obvious answer is buy this book, read it, share it with others. No, I'm obviously I say that kidding, but it's true. I mean, I really do feel like if I were to describe this mission, the mission that we felt like we were on with this book, what the mission that emerged through the process of creation is that we want to explain to folks who don't live this day in and day out how entrepreneurship actually works, how community building actually works, that it can't be dictated from the top down. I know from experience that these people, even the ones who get it or want to get it, want to understand that, but still have they have to engage in some kind of sales process internally with, management or with funders. It's providing them with, a safe space to say, look, this is a real thing. This is how these systems evolve, and this is how actors engage with one another. This is why it's inherently uncertain. This is why it's going to feel like you're doing a bunch of stuff for a long period of time and you don't see the results, and then one day it'll actually occur. So, I do, of course this is self-promotion, but I genuinely feel like our book has been written for the purpose of elevating the discussion to a broader set of people.
That's awesome. Next question. How can we continue to invest in the value of accelerator communities if and when they become more hybrid than physical? So, perfect example, Pi is going completely virtual with its next cohort.
So the question is, how can you better run accelerators virtually or capitalize on them in unique ways?
How can ecosystems support the growth and impact of those accelerators? Is the way I read it.
I mean, to me, it's the same. It's the same way. It's much easier for me. In fact, I'll sign up right now. It would be much easier for me to be a mentor for Pi, because we're in this virtual environment, than it would be to have to fly up there. Although, as much as I would love to do that, that's not happening right now. So I think that's one of the ways. There are just some things that I've observed from mentoring with ongoing Techstars accelerators right now. The process has become much more efficient. So it's actually less of a time commitment to get to the match with the companies that you're ultimately mentoring. So I feel like it's reduced some of the burden and the matching process on the founder. So I think that's a net positive. I mean, it's always difficult to start a relationship virtually. In your community, although you're engaging virtually, you often, I'm sure most of your relationships are pre-existing, so that makes things much easier. So I don't know, I guess I would just say, widen the reach of your mentor pool now, tap into your networks outside of the region, people maybe who weren't willing to fly in, but would Zoom in as much as we love to be on Zoom all day. So that's one way of thinking about it. I'm thinking about it the same way and how we're engaging on startup communities right now. While I'm not able to, meet folks and go to dinners, I can do calls. I can do these book talks in 5 cities in one day, all around the world. And so it's broadening the reach. So that's, those are the trade-offs.
Right. And how do you think, coming through COVID, things continue to evolve every day, every week. What do you think is going to exist when we're on the back end of this? Do you think remote work is continue to play a important role in things? And how do you think the new world that we're in is going to impact the kind of systems and ecosystems and networks that you talk about in your book?
Well, I feel like the number one thing that jumps to my mind is gratitude. This has been a humbling process, and I'm sorry to say it, but it's early days. I'm a huge baseball fan. Apologies if you're not, but I felt normal for about 3 hours watching a baseball game this weekend. And of course, the Miami Marlins, there's COVID outbreak, and now baseball, like basically the season was 5 games. They shouldn't have started it anyway, but it's going to be canceled this week, of course. So that's frustrating, but I feel like I'm going to appreciate people more. I mean, I appreciate physical proximity and relationships more. So that's the first thing I would say. Secondly, let me couch anything I say in, who knows, as we say in the book, these are complex systems. I can make some predictions, but some of them are going to be wrong. Some of them might be right. No one really knows, but just playing my own personal experience with this, that I think it's a huge opportunity for a more distributed workforce. Techstars has been doing this basically from the beginning, and we haven't missed a beat on that front. But I don't believe that people want to work from home 5 days a week, or not all people. I'm speaking from someone who has children, young children, and working from home was always this privilege. It got me out of commuting. I lived in London for 5 years. I was in San Francisco the 5 years before that. Commuting sucked for me. And so I live in a place now where that doesn't suck necessarily. But I want to interact with people. So I feel like it's much easier for teams to be distributed. Our time together will be much more intentional, but I still think, creative-minded folks are going to want to get together in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a colleague on your team or someone in a totally different domain who's, across the hall and you're in a co-working space. So those are kind of the things that I'm feeling will unfold, but your guess is really as good as mine.
Awesome. With the last 5 minutes, every time we do one of these, we always turn it on to the person being interviewed and ask, what can we do to support you? What can we do to uplift your work? And so you said we a lot, so I'm going to offer this up to you. And if Brad wants to chime in from his perspective as well, what can people in places like Portland and around the world be doing to support this work and lift it up and get more people involved?
Let me flip that around and say, first, if there's anything I can do for you, it's ian.hathaway@techstars.com. I would love to hear from you and engage. Hopefully by next summer, we'll see. I'll have a chance to come up and visit, and we can have a good laugh about this, not just the ongoing pandemic, but our whole Crowdcast snafu. And I mean that sincerely. If I can help you in any way, please reach out to me. The other thing is just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I mentioned that I'm observing your community through social media channels, and these Crowdcast events, you seem to be doing a number of these, and Pi in particular is looking for ways to engage the community, to try to hold the community together at this time of separateness. So, just keep doing what you're doing. Brad, would you like to jump in? Senior Feld?
I'm still here. I don't have anything really to add. I tossed my email up as well. One of the things that I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks, as I've been doing a lot of talks around this, and it came up, I did a very long form podcast with Tim Ferriss that came out on Friday, which was, if you want to get to know me better, it's if you can bear to listen to me and Tim talk for 150 minutes. It's a very personal podcast. It has very little to do with entrepreneurship and business, other than sort of personal dynamics. And one of the things that really occurred to me as I was thinking about it is how much we are underestimating the emotional stress of all of these things colliding right now. And, it's 6 o'clock on Monday. I don't know about y'all, but I'm fried. And it's fucking Monday. And, I got to do it again tomorrow, and I got to do it again the day after that, and the day after that. And most of us on this call, I think, are reasonably fortunate and reasonably, have resources, and we're the end of the spectrum of society that put whatever air quotes you want around it, but is privileged or is okay, or, is more resourced on a relative basis. And I think I think the startup communities that exist today, like yours, that are vibrant, and I know the Portland one, we've had investments in Portland for a long time, and I've got a number of friends in Portland, and it's, I don't remember if I was at the very first year that Pi had the first accelerator. Rick might remember, but it was close. The wiring that we have as humans with each other, don't underestimate how valuable that is to have those connections in this moment. And in the same way that I really believe that entrepreneurship and innovation was the thing that was going to lead us out of the financial crisis in 2010, I've been chewing on the idea that community is the thing that will lead us out of this set of crises, and that the behavioral dynamics of humans working in a network model with each other, against the backdrop of a whole bunch of other stuff we've got to deal with, but especially in a crisis, will be that wiring. I don't have the right phrase. I almost said will make us more human. I don't know what the fuck that means, but will help us get through these periods. And I think it's really important in entrepreneurship, because we're so focused on like success and business, and does this work or does that not work? And we're busy, but it wears us out. So I think hopefully the reflection on the power of the community is valuable. And then, kind of your comment about the question, what you could do for us. I kind of would play it back the other way. Don't do it for us. I got plenty of resources. Do it for each other. And really invest in each other in Portland, and invest in each other in your non-Portland but startup community networks that are geographically dispersed. And breathe. That's a word I've been using a lot, is just take a deep breath and recognize that, it's complicated, it's complex, and it's often very misunderstood because people think it's complicated when it's complex, or they think it's complex when it's complicated. So I'll leave you with that Zen koan for the book.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Like, as with most of these conversations, I'm left thinking about the importance of what Rick talked about in his TED Talk. Understanding your dots, taking care of those dots, being a good steward of those dots over time, and having them grow. So I'm going to put out, for anyone who's listening right now, I'm going to buy 5 copies of the book and share those with 5 people that share this on Twitter. And I will be doing that tomorrow when it's released. So if anybody wants to retweet this discussion, it's on Zoom. I don't know what we're going to do to be able to put it somewhere. We'll figure that out.
And then, Stephen, just make sure that they buy 5 copies for the next people, and so on.
Oh, wow. All right. There you go. I like that.
The Ian Hathaway book Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Transmission. We got to get it going.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for being versatile and adjusting to things. Thank you very much, Ian, for putting the time into this, and to you and Brad for doing this book. Looking forward to it being another tool that communities like ours can use moving forward. And we'll definitely talk again soon, and hopefully see each other sooner than we think as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Get her on.